Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at weather for the next week to 10 days for today's video. This will take us to around the 6th of April. So going into the first week of the new month with the videos now. It's going to get colder next week. We're going to have a bit of a cold snap coming along next week. Have all the detail on that in today's video very shortly. The ECOWF 30-day update has been released for UK and Europe as well. That's taking us into the second half of April, so have a look at that and see what's going on. But we're going to start off talking about Article 13. So we've had more information about Article 13 today. The European Union has signed off on Article 13, and it will now become law across all member states of the European Union. So I'll bring it to date with what's happening. You remember we first started talking about this in November, occasionally in the videos. And I've been keeping updated about it, also about YouTube Save Your Internet campaign to try and get some sort of backtrack on this law. But as I say, today it's been signed off with very little change, so it's worrying times. But I'll show you this report from TheVerge.com, and I'll leave a link to this in the links page at YouTube. So the headline, of course, Europe's controversial overhaul of online copyright receives final approval, with the subline of the much criticised upload filter and link tax. That's Article 11. Doesn't really apply to what we're doing with the videos. We're more interested in Article 13, but they're both pretty bad pieces of legislation, Article 13 and Article 11. So this byline is the much criticised upload filter and link tax will soon become law in EU nations. So let's have a read of this then. So the European Parliament has given final approval to the Copyright Directive, a controversial package of legislation designed to update copyright law in Europe for the internet age. Members of Parliament, that's the European Parliament of course, voted 348 in favour of the law to 274 against. A last-minute proposal to remove the law's most controversial clause, known as Article 13, or the upload filter, was narrowly rejected by just 5 votes. It's very, very close. We nearly did get away with getting rid of this, but unfortunately it's gone through. The directive will now be passed on to EU member states who have 24 months to translate it into law. So that's important. It means that we've got a couple of years before this is going to become law within the member states. So it's EU law now, but there will be an implementation period for all of the member states. So there'll be a couple of years grace. You're not going to be losing, by the sound of it anyway, you're not going to be losing the videos immediately. So that is good news. We're going to have a couple of years to implement this and have a think about it. Obviously, the upload filters that platforms like YouTube are going to have to use for this probably haven't even been created yet, so it's going to take them a little while to be able to get the technology together to actually comply with this law. So that is a little bit of good news. Got 24 months, 2 years before anything really starts happening with this. That was the case with GDPR as well. There was a 2-year implementation period with that. So that's a little bit of good news. Let's carry on. The Copyright Directive has been in the works for more than 2 years and has been subject to fierce lobbying from tech giants, copyright holders and digital rights activists. Julia Rieder, an MEP for the German Pirate Party, who led opposition to the directive, said it was a dark day for the internet freedom. Andrus Ansip, the Vice President of the European Commission and a key advocate for the law, said it was a big step ahead that would unify Europe's digital market while protecting online creativity. Details of legislation will have to be decided by individual EU member states, but the law will likely have a huge impact on how the internet works in Europe and further afield, as we saw with GDPR. The EU's data protection legislation. European law can influence US policy. Advocates of the directive say it will balance the playing field between American tech giants and European content creators, giving copyright holders power over how internet platforms distribute their content, but critics say the law is vague and poorly thought out and will end up restricting how content is shared online, stifling innovation. Article 13 lets publishers charge platforms like Google. Article 11 lets publishers change platforms like Google News when they display snippets of news stories, while Article 13, renamed Article 17, in the most recent draft of the legislation. So that's interesting. The Article 13 appears to be so toxic that the EU have had to try and rename it something else. So it is actually Article 17 now. Gives sites like YouTube new duties to stop users from uploading copyrighted content. In both cases, critics say these well-intentioned laws will create trouble. Article 13, for example, could lead to the introduction of upload filters. I don't think there's any could about it. It will lead to the introduction of upload filters on platforms like YouTube that will scan all user content before it's uploaded to sites to remove copyrighted material. The law does not explicitly call for such filters, but critics say it will be an inevitability as sites seek to avoid penalties. So effectively, when somebody uploads copyrighted material now, the person whose copyright has been breached has to complain to, say, YouTube to get that material taken down. So let's say somebody was to upload a song by, for example, the Beatles. So the Beatles management company will then have to complain to YouTube to get that taken down. It would be taken down very quickly. They're very quick at taking down copyrighted material on YouTube. But there would be that period where the video was on YouTube until the person whose copyright has been breached complains to YouTube. With this new law, YouTube is liable financially at the point of upload for the breach of copyright. So that means YouTube and all other platforms, it's not just going to relate to YouTube, it will relate to Facebook, Twitter, any platform where content can be uploaded, will have to have upload filters to check what content is being uploaded and to block that content at the point of upload. So that explains what we're talking about here. And they've got to do that or else they'll be subject to legal action. They'll be liable and eventually you could see big tech giants going out of business potentially. So it could get quite serious financially. So they will have to introduce upload filters. Advocates of directives say claims Article 13 will kill off memes are exaggerations and that the legislation includes protections for parody. But experts say any filters that are introduced will likely be error-prone and ineffective. They also note that given the cost of deploying such technology, the law will have the opposite effect to its intent, accidentally solidifying the dominance of US tech giants over online spaces. So solidifying the position of companies like Google and YouTube. The possible effects of link tax are equally tricky to predict. The law is mainly focused on services like Google Search and Google News, which show snippets of news articles. Google has said that if newspapers choose to charge licenses for this material, it will be forced to strip back the content that it shows in its search and shut down Google News altogether. Critics have accused the company of deploying scare tactics, circulating stripped down screenshots of Google Search, like one below, but the link tax has been introduced in both Germany and Spain and both times it was a failure. And so the storyline goes on. The story goes on that I would think we've probably got to call it a day better. It's been going on a little while. So basically, this has been passed by the European Union. This will become law. I think it probably has become law now, actually, today, across the European Union. But as I said, there's going to be that 2-year implementation period for member states, and also to allow companies like YouTube to be able to develop the filters that they're going to need, develop the technology, essentially, to be able to enforce this law. So there we go. It's worrying times. But what we can say is that it looks as though we're in a bit of trouble with this. So we're just going to wait and see how YouTube chooses to comply with this law. And how it affects. I mean, YouTube have already said it won't just affect. Like music and gaming, it will also affect science and educational videos. That's what we're doing here. We're using charts from other websites. Although in all of the years that I've been doing this now since March 2012. All of those years, I've never had one single website owner ask me not to use their charts, ask me not to use their data. If they did, obviously, I would be very happy not to include any particular chart in the video. It wouldn't be a problem whatsoever, but it turns out that in all these years, nobody has ever asked me not to include their chart in, or their data in the videos. And the feedback I've had is that most people are very happy to have their charts featured in the videos. After all, it is publicity for their websites and for their data. So it all seems rather ridiculous to me, I have to say. But we're just going to have to wait and see how this is implemented, really. And again, I know a lot of you will be wondering how the UK's position relates to this in terms of Brexit. The answer is nobody knows at this point how that is going to play out. So I think we have to assume that this is going to apply to the UK as well as the rest of Europe, depending on what basis the UK leaves the European Union, or if the UK ever leaves the European Union. Then we'll see what the status is with the UK's law versus European law. But at the moment, I think we have to assume probably that Article 13 will apply to me here in the UK, as it will apply to all other parts of Europe. If not, then it means that the UK viewers, there shouldn't be too many impacts, fingers crossed. But that, of course, leaves the rest of people watching across Europe. We do have a large following in Ireland, and I know you have people watching from parts of Scandinavia, from parts of Germany, from parts of France, some parts of the Balkans. We have followers in Spain and Greece. I'm aware of where people are watching through the stats that we have at Gazlo's website and also at YouTube, so I can see where people are accessing the videos from. And I know I have quite a large following across many parts of Europe. So even if the UK turns out to be okay after Brexit, it will still apply to many people within the European Union, potentially. Again, we do have to wait and see how YouTube are going to interpret this law. But it is worrying times. And the only good news is that I've got this couple of years, this 24-month implementation period. So for the next 2 years, looks like everything's okay. But quite where we will be after that, 2021, worrying times. So I'll keep you updated as this develops, of course. And do check out this article from TheVerge.com. Right, so how long have we been talking with that? So we've been talking 15 minutes already. It's going to be a very long video. Let's get on with it then. And we're going to have a look at the centering temperature to start us off. This is the centering temperature so far provisional up to yesterday from Hadley, standing at 7.9, an anomaly of 2.5 degrees above average. Really mild, warm March indeed, but it hasn't really felt it. It's been a very windy month. Certainly the first half of the month was very windy, which did make it feel pretty cold. But very mild, if not warm, March. And with 1 week left, we are going to obviously have a very significant temperature deviation for this month. Central England, this is the GFS precipitation and upper air temperature and precipitation ensemble graph. We're looking at Huddersfield in the north of England today. Red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Huddersfield. And you can see what's coming up next week. So we're going to go much milder than average in the next few days. Temperatures will be lifting up as we go through to the end of the week. But over the weekend, the temperatures are going to drop and it's going to become colder. And we can see that through next week, actually, we've got below average temperatures coming up for Huddersfield. So temperatures look like they're going to be falling over the weekend and then going below average into next week. Maybe the first signs into towards the middle of the month, maybe the first signs of a bit of a recovery in the temperature bend, but that's very extended range stuff. Precipitation wise, it's virtually universally dry through the rest of March. That takes us to the beginning of April just there. And then beyond that, next week is going more unsettled. So colder and more unsettled next week. Temperature anomalies coming out very close to average from the 26th of March through to the 3rd of April. Precipitation anomalies coming out drier than average, so not too far from average with temperatures, but still remains pretty dry. This is the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. It shows high pressure reaching across many parts of the country on Friday, bringing a dry and mild end to the week, if not quite warm. Over the weekend, a cold front drifts southwards, still with high pressure dominating the weather, so going to be a lot of dry weather coming up over the weekend, but temperatures will lower as the air moves in from the north. And then into next week, here comes that northerly plunge. Monday to Tuesday, the high pressure pulls out in the middle of the Atlantic. It allows a cold front to sweep southwards, and then that turns the winds into the north, and much colder northerly winds start to surge southwards. Those northerly winds continue into Wednesday and may turn a little bit northeasterly. So that could bring snow showers to northern and eastern parts of the country next week. There's the upper air temperatures for Wednesday next week. And you'll see the minus 10 Celsius isotherm has pushed a long way southwards. So, I mean, that's quite unusual actually to get the minus 10 Celsius isotherm into the UK in April. That's the impressive northerly plunge that we're seeing there. Excuse me. And it would certainly be enough to bring snow showers to northern and eastern parts of the country where we are exposed to those northerly and northeasterly winds. Moving up towards day 10, low pressure starts to move back in from off the Atlantic, so we cut off that northerly supply. It's still pretty cold, really, this air moving in from the North Atlantic, but it's less cold than the air we have kind of like in the early part of next week, if you see what I mean. So by day 10, we're kind of cool to borderline cold, and probably bring rain in from off the Atlantic, and maybe a little bit of hill snow too. In the more extended range, we get this ridge building to the north of the country. That's turning winds into the east. So this looks like quite a prolonged spell of fairly below average temperatures actually coming up through the first week of April. Eventually, we finish up with the 6 o'clock run of the GFS looking like that. High pressure is to our northeast, low pressure out to the west. We're starting to push up some milder air from southern parts of Europe. But certainly the first week of April is looking fairly chilly here. Parallel GFS run, again, mild, dry, if not quite warm on Friday, then into the weekend. It stays mainly dry under this ridge of high pressure, but we lower the temperature as a weak cold front moves south, and the air starts to drift in from the north. Through to the middle of next week, the high pressure pulls out into the middle of the Atlantic, and that turns the wind into the north again. So there's that northerly showing up once again from Tuesday to Wednesday. You follow the isobars back. The air is originating from a very long way north, actually. The air is originating from up there. And if you follow those isobars down, you'll see this is a direct Arctic northerly plunge that we've got here. So not surprising with the air originating from so far north that the GFS is bringing down some impressively cold upper air temperatures. There are the upper air temperatures Wednesday next week. Again, minus 10 Celsius isotherm pushing through many parts of the country, certainly northern parts of the country anyway. Day 10, we start to move low pressure back in off the Atlantic, so temperatures begin to stage recovery in the second half of next week, but probably still quite chilly with rain heading in from the Atlantic Ocean. And then in the more extended range, a parallel GFS run keeps things quite unsettled and fairly cool as well. The jet stream is a line northwest to southeast, so it's not cold, it's not bringing snow, but it's certainly quite chilly, quite cool, quite miserable, and low pressure would be providing outbreaks of rain at times too. East everywhere, again, we've got this warm ridge on Friday, bringing lots of dry and fine weather. Over the weekend, it stays pretty dry, but temperatures do lower. And then into next week, here comes that low pressure to the north of Scotland and its cold front, which eventually does turn the wind into the north. So ECM is also going for this cold northerly wind through the middle part of next week, but nowhere near as cold with the upper air temperatures. Look where the minus 10 Celsius isotherm is with the ECM. It's up there compared to where the GFS has it, which is somewhere around here. So the ECM is nowhere near as cold with this northerly for next week, but it's still trending in the same sort of direction. And then up to day 10, we start to try and build a little bit of a ridge back in from off the Atlantic. So probably turning drier and a little bit less cold through the middle part of through the second half, I should say, of next week up to day 10. These are the options that are on the table from the ECM ensembles today from the Icelandic Met Office at day 10, which is the 5th of April. So we've got 21 members of the ECM ensembles, including the control and operational ECM runs that have low pressure up to our northwest and to our south. A ridge is building through the country rather like that. So trying to settle things down, but still looking quite unsettled with those 21. Then we've got 19 that have low pressure up to the north, and they're bringing wind in from off the Atlantic rather like that. And they've got another 11 that look unsettled with low pressure over and to the east of the country, and they're bringing down some pretty cold air from the northwest with those ones. Overall, the ECM model is still looking quite unsettled, or the ECM ensembles, I should say, still looking quite unsettled at day 10. In 2 weeks' time, these are the options. This is the 10th of April. We have 20 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure out to the west, and they're bringing in this westerly flow rather like that. We've got 16 members of the ECM ensembles with low pressure up to the north and through the UK, so they look pretty cool and unsettled. And then there's a more minority option of just 15 that have us under high pressure. So we may see high pressure building back as we go into the second week of April, turning drier and warm with the jet stream pushing north. But overall, if you combine these 20 with these 16, it looks like the ECM wants to keep things quite unsettled really into the second week of April. Finally, just having a look at charts from CFSV2 for the next month. These are 500 millibar heights breaking down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 26th of March to the 1st of April. The coming week has above average heights out to our west, below average heights up to north. We're still dominated by high pressure, although it may start turning a little bit cooler over the weekend as the air drifts in from the North Atlantic. Now, this is week 2. This is when we should be getting a cold snap. And the ECM, the CFS I should say, not really showing it. This is the 2nd to the 8th of April. It has above average heights over and to the east-northeast of the country, below average heights to the west-northwest. This will bring the wind in from a southeasterly direction, would be mainly dry and probably quite mild, if not fairly warm. Certainly no northerly there. So the CFS isn't convinced about this northerly next week. We should wait and see. This is week 3. It's the 9th to the 15th of April with above average heights again through the country and extending to our east, below average heights up to the north. Jet streams going up there, bringing a lot of dry and pretty mild weather across many parts of the country, you would have thought. And then week 4, very little change, is 16th, 22nd of April. Above average heights to our west-southwest, below average heights up to the north. And we're bringing in sort of a flat west-southwesterly flow, probably for southern areas anyway, mainly dry. And you would have thought quite mild, if not fairly warm. Right, that's brought you up to date with all of the weather developments and all of the Article 13, or is it Article 17? I'm not sure. But it's brought you up to date with all of the developments in terms of this dreadful, dreadful piece of legislation that the European Union has decided in their infinite wisdom that they are going to drop onto all of us. So I'll keep you updated with that. Of course, it will be an ongoing situation over the next few months, next couple of years, as we build up through the implementation phase, and eventually 2021 we're going to arrive at these awful upload filters that are just going to be absolutely horrible. And we'll see where we go with it. But in terms of weather, all eyes will be on that cold snap. The CFS not really convinced about that cold snap next week, though, which is quite interesting. But between the GFS and the ECM, it does look as though we've got fairly good agreement about it. So I think that will happen. I think we'll get this northerly plunge next week, and we'll be keeping updated about that in the videos in the next few days. Right, 5-day forecast tomorrow, and another look at the weather for the next week to 10 days as well. That's all for now, though, and thanks for watching.